Okay, brief walkthrough over the slides in Module 7 in Incident Response and Disaster Recovery. Some of these things are going to overlap with network defense, so should be good review for some of those materials. So we're talking about the IDSs, the Incident Response Systems. Now these are the systems that, when we're talking about disaster recovery, these are the systems that we rely on to kick in the disaster response to tell you that something has happened. In the security area, in the security topic, these are the systems that indicate or protect you against incidents. We're going to look at firewalls, intrusion detection, and how do we decide what to do about those intrusions, and event management systems. We need to know what happened, and in order to recover the systems that were damaged. Okay, so we start at the level of the intrusion detection. We didn't need to know something happened. This is the burglar alarm in your network, in your system. Remember, that actually may be the physical burglar alarm, because disaster recovery covers physical as well as the computer systems. So if there's a fire, if there's a flood, there's physical protection as well as the systems. So think outside just the systems. Where in network defense, we're thinking mostly the systems, the computer systems. But as we think about the intrusion, it's burglar alarm that something has got into the system. It's an intrusion. And more they have to be automatic response, because these systems can get in and hack your system so much faster. And before the phone even rings, waking up the person at 3 in the morning, the system's already been compromised and damaged and down. And it's more of, okay, well, how do we repair what happened? So this system needs to detect as well as know what happened, and is the attack in progress. They've been available for about 30 years now, and I've never had an audible alarm. Mostly it's an email, but it could produce audible alarms in the system's admin room. A better system, IDP or IP, intrusion prevention system, keeps it from happening by that automatic response. That's the kind of system you want. And because they're so combined, it's the same topic, they call them IDPS, intrusion detection and preventions. So some things that you can do when you see a system happening, an attack happening. You cut the connection. That would be at the firewall or at the system itself. If it is isolated to a single host, that host could be taken off the network. Firewall, without bringing down the entire system, you could block that particular address if the attacker is coming from that. Block all access to the host or the system or any other resources, and the changes, you can change the whole security environment. Change the content. Turn it to from an image to just a meaningless data. If you know some malware's in there, just turn it all to zeros. So you've got various terms going on with IDPS. You've got your alarm that something's happened. Multiple alarms, maybe they're all insignificant, but all together happening at the same time, you could say that counts as a one higher level alarm. That's the clustering idea. Filtering is checking to see if you've got some false positives, filtering those out if they're not suspicious enough. And all activity on the system you consider suspicious, and it has to be proven to be good activity. How confident are you in detecting that it is, or determining that it is an attack? How can systems evade the attack? Do you have some sort of false attack stimulus. Let's see, let me turn on my little pointer here. Now, if you miss one, that's false negative. If you misidentify one, that was not a bad thing, it's false positive. You want to do some filtering, basically to not to have better confidence in your detection. There's always noise, variation, making you suspicious, potential attacks. Noise is always out there. The policy, not just policies of people, but what rules are set up in the system, basically configuration of your IDPS. Are you making the policy publicized to people? And can you modify the site policies? I haven't heard that one much. The true attack is pretending to be an attack, perhaps as a part of the testing. Tuning is adjusting your system. Now, remember, the primary use is to stop the attack and recognize if there's some break in the rules, and then even perhaps determine that attack is about to happen. Later, secondary use is finding out what the problems are and fixing it, and perhaps even taking people to court for deterrence. That is a secondary use, and almost I have not heard much emphasis on actual taking them to court and punishing the offenders. It's more because that involves a lot more work to try to store all the evidence with a chain of custody. Oh, there's so many things that get involved if you actually want to prosecute the offenders. But it can be done. New vulnerabilities are showing up. They're not easily quickly corrected, and the attack can happen and be done before there's even the alarm goes off. You can't turn off your website. You have to keep the system running, so you reduce the effect on your system. Perhaps having, of course, getting the backup immediately up if they actually do take down your website. Automated response sounds like a good thing, but what if the automated response has a flaw in it? You can compound your error in the response. The vulnerability may actually be in the response. So many ways. Now, it's going to be expensive. It's going to cost you money. So that's why you have your business case. You do your risk analysis, document why it's worth that much money to be spent. And one way to document and justify is what attacks are happening. You pay someone for that research. Your antivirus companies know what kind of attacks are happening. Of course, they want you to buy their products. It's in their interest to keep track of the ongoing attacks, so you have to have multiple sources to verify the attacks currently occurring. Sadly, some organizations don't want to report the attacks because that implies some sort of vulnerability, but that is valuable information. When you're purchasing things, remember, it's not just the acquisition costs, not the price of the appliance, but all the costs involved in maintaining and supporting the system. Remember, you have to pay these people that are maintaining them, and it's 24/7. So not a bad idea to think about contracting that out. And you're doing that and that's why the cloud is so popular. You're basically contracting out a lot of the security issues to your cloud provider, and they provide a decent price, making a little more of a pain to develop. But AWS, Amazon Cloud is super secure. You don't hear many attacks about that. So That's a great way to implement it. You're improving network security. You're learning about your local security. You can do some forensics, post-attack review, find out what they did. And we're going to learn about network-based, host-based, or application-based. Primarily, people think about network-based. That's your firewall security. Host-based, that's your local antivirus. Application-based, think of that as, say you've got QuickBooks, and you have a QuickBooks intrusion detection. Only works with that particular application, but may find specific attacks for that application. A database system as well. You're using a database, you have some specific focus software that watches for attacks on that specific database system. So that would be the application based. Okay, so you've got data coming in from the external network and coming in through your router, some data coming through, you're analyzing data, and you can examine the packets. Remember, you can look at static, basic filtering, or you can look at, well, long-term behavior, a little more signature-based. That's all coming through into your system. That's your host IDPS. That's typically your firewall. It can be multiple appliances, though. You don't have to just have one appliance. You're watching the network traffic. That's the one you look at first because it's seeing everything coming in and out. Much of it is encrypted, so you're not able to see everything, and that's why you do need the others. But you can see behavior, you can see packets, and you can watch for traffic. If you see suddenly a lot of ICMPs, ping, you can say, regardless of what the data is inside of it, you can see the sudden change in behavior and alarm if that's, you know, that's going to lead to an attack. Remember, you can also detect people just pinging your system and doing a little reconnaissance. Sometimes it's innocent network status, so you have to filter that out. They can detect many attacks because they're watching all the traffic. And you can put it in various places in the network. You don't just have to have one. You can put it between departments. You can put it on the network coming into a more secure department, more sensitive. And a specific network that you want to protect or monitor. It could be a honeypot network that you want them to come here thinking they're getting into your system, and here's where you can trap them and lure them in so you can see where they're coming from and learn about the attacker. That's all part of the strategies of the blue team. The blue team is the defense, red team are the attackers. And the arrow here indicates this is an inline system where all the network traffic is going through the system. Nothing that gets through the network has not gone through your appliance. So this appliance better be fast and not slow down if there's more traffic. So typically, this is a fast device, and a mirrored management interface goes to another switch that can watch as fast as possible a mirror of all the traffic. If this thing fails or can't keep up, you're not slowing down the traffic into your system. Of course, it may miss things coming through if it can't keep up, so you do want this guy to keep up. But it does not affect the load generally because this is a pass-through, call it a passive. It doesn't affect or shouldn't affect the speed of the traffic going through. Regardless of how heavy this system is working, the traffic will always be going through to your network. So inline is the term we're looking at there. Another passive where we are tapping. We're not even, well, we do. What they're missing here is there is actually a switch that's mirroring the traffic to this system. Here we have an inline system that has a spanning port. The tap, there is actually a device here that allows this tap to happen. So it's very much like this. But anyway, your system can read data from multiple areas. Notice it's before the switch, seeing traffic. After the firewall, things that got through, you can still say, well, let's just make sure the firewall is not letting through bad things. The data from here and from here are both valuable to our server. This guy could see what packets, compared to what packets came in, did it make it through the firewall? It could actually be monitoring the effectiveness of your firewall. If you see bad things, a significant difference in traffic here and traffic here, your firewall's doing a lot of blocking. Could indicate, hey, let's make sure we're not doing false positives and blocking legit traffic. So passive, network-based. Passive means it's not slowing down the traffic coming through to your internal network. Okay. The firewall, you can think of your firewall as an active system. So they call it a switched port analysis port or mirror port. Some call it a promiscuous port. Basically showing all your traffic. This actually, with some switches, when you set up a mirror port, the actual switch does drop in performance, because mirroring all the traffic to an additional port besides the port that the traffic was meant to go to can slow down your switches. So monitoring ports are useful, but it is a ton of traffic. So whatever wants to monitor that traffic better be able to handle it. I have brought down systems trying to monitor, turning on a mirroring port and then actually trying to monitor it. The system that was monitoring went down. Now you can use a tap rather than a span port, but that is a separate appliance. Basically, think of it as electronically duplicating the traffic. I'll call it a dedicated device that gives you a mirrored port. Remember, the mirrored port means all the traffic that's going through this network, it's as though it's all being sent out here just for monitoring. You can analyze the traffic, look at log files to see what in the world is happening. So lots of data to analyze coming through. Thousands of packets per second if you have a decently loaded network. Now you can look for patterns in attack. Now, signatures can mean many things. Could be the actual data signature, could be the IP address, could be a combination of IP address and particular types of packets. And known signatures can then be saved in a data file that, as traffic comes through, you're comparing signatures and blocking if it matches the signature. You can look at packets that are malformed. Remember, there's certain rules about how packets should be formed that makes them meaningful. Because of the way packets are flexible, you could actually have invalid data packets that in some systems an invalid data packet can actually bring down a system because it doesn't know what to do with it. So malformed packets are one type of attack that if you see them, you can say, hey, maybe we're being scanned for proper handling of packets, or maybe it's a diversion. Other protocols may have bad formatting because someone just purposely had a bad malformed website. HTTP, your browsers will handle a lot of errors, and you can go into debug mode in your browser, and even on very legit sites see lots of errors in that. Very easy to do Control-Shift-I and see the debug messages and see many legit sites have issues with protocol. These protocols are insecure, but sometimes people are still using them. The failure of a control to react to an actual attack event. That means it failed to catch something. It said it was good and it wasn't good. That is a false negative. False negative, failed to catch an actual attack. A false positive is it called it a bad thing, but it wasn't. False negative is, oh, it's not bad, and it let it through. False negative. failure to react to an actual event. You can analyze the wireless traffic. Same kind of thing. And the scary part about them is, where are they? They can be hidden. They can be dropped outside your building, and people can be fooled to connect to it. It can be dropped outside of a building in a brick-looking object, or it can be dropped on the roof with a drone and just simply sit there and see what wireless access points are being advertised, and then can pick up and fly away, and you would never know unless you're watching for drones. Watch for rogue wireless LANs that are not secured with old WEP security. I have that available. What do you do when you have your parents are at an assisted care facility, and when you connect, it says low security? Do you not connect, or do you want to check your email? Watching for scanners, watching for attacks. These are all things that the wireless attacks or wireless monitors can do. Man in the middle. I'm pretending to be a wireless access point, but I'm actually letting you in, watching your traffic, and sending it on. Now, if you're encrypting your traffic, it's a little harder for me to attack you. But man in the middle, pretending to be a wireless and lure you in to use me as a connection. Other wireless issues. Some higher level protocols can't be monitored. They're just all encrypted. I can secure wired devices, wired connections into my system, and I can watch for new connections in. But with wireless, it's a little hard to do that. You do have a limited on range in your wireless. Hard to know where they're deployed. You want to deploy them to optimize the detection of other systems, and they generally work independently. As you use more of them, they get more expensive, just like any technology. Remember, you're trying to monitor the wireless, so you want to place these strategically so you don't have to buy thousands of them. They're usually passive. They don't affect the network. They simply watch the traffic. They listen to the signal. They don't disrupt your normal operations. Attackers may not even be able to detect them because they're simply listening, not generating traffic. They do have a problem. Network IDPSs. This is the overall. This is not just wireless, but any network intrusion detection prevention. Because you're watching all the traffic coming through, they can easily be overwhelmed. And because you've got all sorts of switches, you can't sometimes provide all the information needed. That's where you have to mirror the ports. So you don't have mirrored traffic so much. You have to find and set up mirrored ports on switches. Because mirroring can load your switch, you may not be able to get a consistent monitoring of that. Because we're encrypting a lot of the traffic, you can't see the data. You can see where it's going to and coming from, but you can't see what's inside of it. So less information available to you. But you can see where traffic is coming, whether it's a sudden increase. And it's hard to know whether it's secure. You have to look through the logs. Some attacks are easy to detect, like malformed packets. Remember, malformed packets may be an attack in themselves because NID, network intrusion detection, may not know what to do with malformed packets and actually crash. If they're a decent NIDPS, they won't crash based on malform, but they will log the malform packets, and it's up to you to dig through the logs. Because digging through the logs is a primary activity, there's actually programs you can buy to help dig through the logs for you. All right, now the host. This would be your Windows firewall software running in the Windows operating system, or the Norton firewall. They're watching just the activity that comes into your computer or server. You better have one on your servers. They're also known as system integrity verifiers because one thing they can do is watch for changes in important system files. Watch all the Windows System 32 files. Watch for any change in any of those. Anytime there's any change in registry files, it logs that or may block that. And basically what you're doing is managing any changes, knowing that they're authorized. Trigger an alarm when a change was made and it was unknown or was not authorized. So you classify your files into system files or normal operating files. As the rules change, you watch for no changes to operating system files, but others are allowed to be changed. As a system changes, you may be monitoring that. They can talk to each other and say, hey, I've had these changes on mine. You could have one main program that's watching them. And that gets into our SIEM systems, monitoring multiple systems. So usually the software itself knows how to categorize folders, but in the installation, you may say, watch all the users, documents, folders. Don't worry about changes to those. Watch the system files. That's where your initial configuration would be. So here you have your host-based IDPS. The agents, where are they? They are on the various systems with their own IDPS agent on all the protected systems. Now here it's only showing them on servers. You could also have them on, there's your workstations. You can have them on workstations as well. These would be the more expensive ones because these are the more critical systems and they're watching for critical changes in these systems. Here, your users are wildly downloading all sorts of things. You check if your users are following policies. So something that got through that was encrypted that the IDPS did not see, it can detect local events. Made it through. Remember, because that network traffic is typically encrypted, it's decrypted and then used at the host. You may catch some malware that was hiding in an encrypted packet. If applications are running bad, you can examine audit logs of particular applications. You've got to deal with each host this time. You got to manage each host. It can be attacked itself. They tell you, oh, disable your antivirus while you're installing this program. That might be part of an attack. They're not doing multi-host scanning. They can be attacked themselves. You overwhelm the antivirus. And it can bog up your disk space. And remember, it does load your system. So let's not run 10 antivirus software packages on your system. I've known people regularly will run 2. Some are happy with what Windows provides in the operating system. Now, applications, they're watching for specific activity in an application, like bad or strange activity in the accounting software, attempts to open invalid files or execute invalid files. They can watch for this kind of activity on the specific host. Okay, the advantages, they can watch for specific things, specific users, but they may be more vulnerable to attack. Can operate when the data is encrypted because at the point of the application, data is getting decrypted. May be vulnerable to a Trojan horse type thing. Something got through and messed with the application IDPS. So network-based, wireless network-based, can analyze everything, can analyze wireless activity. Host-based, watches for things on the individual host. Application-based, allows watch for specific activity within a specific application. Signature-based can be used on any of those levels. Basic behavior specific signature. Signature-based requires continually updated. You got to get your antivirus updates, or your antivirus is not working. You got to get those signatures updates. So any IDPS that uses signature, you have to basically subscribe to the database update. The free ones, you get the later warnings. You pay for a subscription, you get the immediate attacks, indications, or signatures. Some attacks may get through signature-based because they can slip through slow. They attack slowly, and so aren't caught. Anomaly-based, something normally not happening, well, that requires you to have some kind of baseline. If you're going to detect what's not normal anymore, you need to know what is normal. So you've got to regularly sample activity, determine what's a new normal. If anything's outside of the normal, they have that clipping level. A lot more processing because you're establishing your baseline. You don't want to have false positives, false negatives, so they require a lot more overhead. So in planning for IDPS, you have to decide what you need to detect. Again, your risk management. Where do you put most of your money in? What are your critical systems? And you've got to be able to commit time to processing logs, or don't worry about collecting logs if you're not going to process them. And this is something that's still just shocking to me with Windows as I was learning about logging in Windows. When you turn on basic logging, your logs fill up so quickly. It's like they're almost useless. They just fill up so quickly. When you want to watch for attempts at failed logins, just turning on logging for logins makes a huge log file in Windows. Maybe one day they'll correct that. And one big hole I found is the logs do not log failed attempts for administrative privileges. It logs successful administrative privileges escalation, but does not log it when someone attempted. I do not understand why. IDPS, you've got to validate that they're working, doing some kind of testing. And your baseline, you've got to regularly monitor to determine your baseline. Know what to watch for. Keep track of your physical wiring of your system. Continue to review your IDPS, your help desk, and how do you do the triage? That's your risk assessment. Which is the most serious attack? What do we watch for? Things that you need to watch out for when you're implementing changes in profiles. Know how their systems are working. You establish what your normal is. Create some sort of logging and software that will do this for you. Event correlation. What all happened at the same time frame? In order to do that, all the hosts better have the same time. If they better all be using a time server. If you're not using a time server, you're very vulnerable. You lose power. That system, without using a time server, his clock is off. So you won't be able to do event correlation. keep using some sort of knowledge base. Again, there's software to allow that. It does it for you. Keep the research going on the internet. Use Wireshark. Learn to use something like Wireshark or other packet sniffers that display that. Learn about it and learn that this may be you. You're replaceable with experience knowing how this all works. Because log files get huge, you can get a log file monitor. Log file monitor can collect multiple log files, and log files from multiple areas may raise a suspicion of certain activity. And again, you can use them to trace back what happened. Automated response is scary, but it's something that you're just going to have to use just because attacks can come in and go so quickly. They have some fears about that. Sometimes administrators may look like hackers themselves because they're looking for what the hacker did. Trap and trace. Detect intrusion with things like tripwires. Have they logged in as root? No one else ever logs in as root. That would indicate some sort of attack. Honeypots. You have a fake network of fake machines generating fake traffic to look like real traffic, and someone gets into your system. They say, hey, we see that traffic going to file server secret, and they run in and they say, oh, that's the system we need to attack. You distract them. Perhaps while they are being distracted in a fake system, you can alarm that activity has happened, and then either shut them down or trace them back in order to either prosecute or know how to defend against what they're trying to do. You could develop filters based on what people have tried to do in the honeypot. Honey nets. You got to be careful not to be entrapping. You got the Fourth Amendment. We're dealing with illegal searches. I figure if they're coming into your system, whatever they do on your system is open. But to actually try to prosecute, that's where these things might come in. There's some sort of expectation of privacy. I'm not going to worry about all the legal things. Honeypots, hard to know how effective they are, but you can see as one way of distracting an attacker, slowing them down if they're thinking they're attacking a real system and they're in the honeypot system. This is a big thing now. Security information and event management. Watching what's going on multiple systems because systems are growing. How can we centralize the collection of information and react to them? Basically, Unix had the system logs, collecting system logs from everywhere into one place, using that kind of idea to collect the logs from multiple systems and determine an attack. So that's your threat intelligence. There's multiple SIEM systems, system event intrusion and event management, right? Information and event management. Many packages, just look up SIEM and you'll see lots of packages. Splunk is one popular package. They collect the logs and events and figure out is something bad happening overall to our systems, because that's a lot of data. There's a lot of data analytics involved in those systems. You got to collect data from a lot of systems. And aggregation means they pull the data together from multiple systems. Clocks that are synchronized, they can see what events happen at the same times, collected from multiple devices, and may have a better pattern to known, and perhaps even recognize emerging threats. They're not useful unless they're getting the real-time data. They will allow or maybe do some sort of automatic incident response, at least blocking IPs if it's an obvious denial of service attack. Monitoring your users. Are they following policies within the company? Have some sort of intelligence about threats, automate, updating ongoing threats, and then detecting the threats. So much larger system, gathering lots of data, and based on some analysis of that, tons of data, giving you alerts and reports, and allowing you to ask the system, hey, what happened last Tuesday? Were there suspicious traffic? Or who was on the network? Who logged in that day when we later on find something happened? So big systems. Some are free. Some have multiple capabilities. Most of them, you install software on all your hosts that we call agents that report to the central system all their log files and all their events. How easy is it to configure, and can you increase capacity? Many of the systems are built that will actually run in the cloud, and you simply configure your systems to report events to that system out in the cloud. So Splunk does that. Many vendors allow this, and so you can actually have a career in being an expert in SIEM, something like Splunk. You can actually get certified with Splunk and support and sell and administer. Get paid for administering that, and probably make a decent amount of money. System Integrity Verifier is another name for which of the following types of IDPSs. Remember, a System Integrity Verifier looks at specific files in a system and watches for changes. Well, the system is a host, so that would be a host-based IDPS, because it's watching for changes to that host's system files. So, in summary, your IDPS is your burglar alarm. You've got lots of reasons to use it and many possible configurations: network-based, host-based, application-based. These have to be strategic in where you place them. Network-based, monitoring most of the traffic. Application-based, so we'll go host-based, monitoring what happens on a host. Refinement of that, watching specifically what happens in an application. And how you detect them affects how you operate. Signature-based or statistical anomaly-based. Signature-based, you have to have database of signatures. Anomaly-based takes more CPU load, looking for variation from a baseline. Watching log files. Reporting log files to a centralized event management that handles detection as well, and logging of the data. You can install these. So lots of work can be done at all those levels. I'd say if you're starting in security, the network, knowing how to use a firewall, how firewalls work. pfSense is a great firewall to work with. It's free and has lots of capabilities to learn and install and configure, learn how to do network-based IDPS. You can jump right into SIEM. Zabbix is mentioned. It's a centralized logging. I was able to implement it on our labs. It's also open source free, and I came across it because it was mentioned in the pfSense software packages you could install was something that worked with Zabbix. Splunk is a huge SIEM package as well. More professional level, might take a longer time to use. You can get a trial, but that's very powerful as well. Cloud-based servers where SIEM you install it yourself and roll your own. All right, that's it for Module 7 in disaster recovery.